Hello everyone, my name is Seb van Leest and this is our second video in the series of chess basics. The first video talked through explaining the chessboard, how each piece moves, and how to identify the squares. This video shall be looking at piece value. How can you tell one piece is better than the other? And how the pieces can best be used to help each other. This pawn, not just this pawn, any pawn, has a value of 1. Well, why 1? Why isn't it 7? Well, I'll explain. You put this pawn anywhere. Remember, it moves inexorably forward, but it attacks any squares diagonally. Okay? I put this pawn here. Let's actually put them where they belong. Where the pawns all start, on where all the white pawns, remember this, on the second rank. See the number 2 there? Nice and clear. I can move this pawn 2 squares or 1. It hasn't moved, so I could move it 2. But once it's moved, I can only move it 1. Now this pawn. How many squares is this pawn attacking? 1 there and 1 there. Let's make this even clearer. This is the 4th rank. You see the number 4 there? We put a line across here. Imagine there is an equator there. The center of the Earth. Well, not really. The kind of the center of the chessboard is along this tiny line of 4.5. But if I put a pawn, let's put them all on the 5th. Imagine this chessboard's cut in half. This side of the board, it doesn't exist. It's not real. It's all in your imagination. No, it's real. But we are focused on these. Nope, steady. On those top 4 by 8. And I shall explain why. On the top 4 by 8, in general, how many squares does a pawn attack? It attacks 2. Half of 2 is 1. So a pawn's value, how much it is worth, is 1. 1 point. I take a rook. I put him anywhere in this top 4 by 8. You see 4 by 8, 4 by 8. Put him anywhere. Let's put the rook here. Forgetting this side of the chessboard, it doesn't exist. It's in your imagination. It's not real. There's a big red X over it. It's not real. How many squares does this rook, get the word right, this rook attack? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You see that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Remember this side of the chessboard, we're forgetting for the time being. How many orange squares are there? There are 10. Half of 10 is 5. So a rook has a value of 5. Its piece value, its points, is worth 5 points. So a pawn is worth 1. Let's put them down here. Pawn is 1. Rook is 5. There's some space in the center. In the middle here, there's a few pieces that will go in between the 1 on this end of the scale and a 5 on this end of the scale. Bishop. Put him on the 5th, so he's at the bottom of our world. How many squares is this guy attacking? Well, let's find out. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 4, 5, 6. 4, 5, 6. Half of 6 is 3. There you go. That's a 1. We know that's a 5, and that has a value of 1. So 3 is in between those two. Let's pop it here. We have the knight. Strange piece. If we pop it here, remember, we're on the edge of our land. So how many squares? 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4's good. I can do slightly better than that. You see how there's space up here? I move the knight at 1 square. Now look at all the dark squares. Forgetting these two. Forget the blue squares. How many squares above the 5th rank? The 5th rank included, and above that is the knight attacking. 1, 2, 3, 4. We had 4 last time, didn't we? Well, we also have that one, which is a 5th, and that one, which is a 6th. 6 squares. Remember, in the sweet center, the knight controls 8, but now we are looking at piece value. So we're looking at the 5th rank, this blue line, and above. So half of 6 is 3. But didn't the bishop also have 6? It did indeed. So the knight and the bishop both have 3. If you ask 100 people who are chess players, which piece is better, the knight or the bishop? Which piece do you prefer, the knight or the bishop? 50 will say the knight, 50 will say the bishop. Sometimes the knight is better in certain circumstances, sometimes the bishop's better. It's up to your playing style, really. Me personally, I like the knight because it's so annoying and it's just cool, you know, because I'm cool, obviously. The king, we'll get back to him. The queen. Remember, we cut it off at the 5th, so let's put the queen on the 5th, on the edge of our land. How many squares is that queen controlling? Remember, she's got the rook and the bishop ability. She's 2 in 1. She's some sort of weird hybrid. She's not an electric car on petrol. She's no some sort of weird hybrid rook-bishop. Doesn't look anything like a rook and a bishop. You put these two together, you get some sort of... What shape's that? I can't make it out, but it's not a queen. But how many squares is this queen controlling? Let's work through it together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's quite a few already. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. A lot of squares. 16 squares. Half of 16 is 8. But because the queen is the most powerful piece, and because there's only one of her, we add a 1 to the 8, so the queen is worth 9. We use our normal maths, like how many squares she has, divided by 2, we get to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, half of 6 is 8, but because there's the most powerful piece, and there's one of her, we add a 1, so we get 9. So we have a 9, a 5, 2 3s, and a 1. Okay, slowly up this green arrow is ascending order of power, how strong those pieces are. The king is worth the game. Unlimited now. Of course, if your king is attacked, you say check. You don't say check. If you attack your opponent's king, if you move one of your pieces and it attacks your opponent's king directly, there's no pawns or other bits in the way, you say check, which is quite cool. If I put you in check, if I put a player, an opponent, whoever, if you put somebody in check and all their legal moves, remember we talked about illegal moves last time? If I put you in check and every legal move your opponent makes, they're still in check, that's called checkmate. And that is the end of the game and you've won. Yay! You get a pat on the back or a sandwich, I don't know. Well done. But the king, he still has a value. Remember, we cut it off at the 5th. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Half of 8 is 4. So the king actually goes here. Forgetting the game, just in terms of pieces, the king is the middle, almost. The king is the 4th most powerful piece. That means if there's a king, if I've got a king and a knight, and you have a king and a knight, we're equal. But if I have a king and you've got a knight, you need to have a king anyway. But if there's a situation where I have a king going after your knight, my king can boss your knight around. But then these two are the same. They can't really do much in terms of differences, but they can boss the pawn around. So the green arrow is the ascending line of power. The queen bosses the rook around when she's on her own against the rook. The rook will boss the king around. The king, let's make this clearer. The king will boss the 2 bishops around. The bishop and knight, 2 bishops, 2 knights. It gets different there. But a single knight bossed around by the king. A single bishop bossed around by the king. The green arrow is now the descending order of power. and the knight and the bishop on their own boss about a single pawn. Let's move him in so we can get all these lovely red arrows. The green arrow shows the descending order of power. The queen bosses the rook bosses the knight. It can as well. The rook bosses the king, king, knight, king, bishop, and those two against a pawn. So this queen is the most powerful. This rook is the second most powerful above all others. The king is the third above these three. The knight and the bishop are second weakest piece apart from the pawn. So, if I had a king, and you're the king, and I had a queen, remember the queen's the most powerful piece, and in the order we just showed, you can rewrite and screenshot that. That could be useful for you. The queen is the most powerful. You see if I put her here, or anywhere really, look at all those circles I can move to. That's pretty cool, that's a lot. A queen's the most powerful piece. And if I put the queen here, I can show you with some fun colored arrows all the squares I can move to. I've seen a lot of people struggling in this position. How does white win the game? Well, quite easily. You can win with a king and a rook, but you can win with a king and two bishops, a king and two knights, and a king and a queen. But how do you do that? Well, this is a short video on piece value. The third video in our series shall explain what a check is, checkmate, and how you can get really simple checkmates, how you can win with a king and a queen. You might not believe me, but I can win this with white, a king and a rook against a lone king. White can win, but that's in our third video.